Welcome back to HOA Craze. The permit was fine until she decided it was not. I was standing in my own driveway when Stephanie shouted that I had ignored her last email, and now she was enforcing in person. "I do not care what management promised you," she said, waving a clipboard like a weapon. The gate glitched 20 minutes ago and locked me out of the landing at Harborview Ridge Association for 15 minutes, which apparently gave her enough time to drive over, pull out a handheld radio, and summon a tow truck. I work as a county clerk employee who knows public records rules, so I knew immediately that none of this was normal. The tow truck was already backing into my driveway, its amber lights slicing through the humid Jacksonville evening air, and Stephanie was peeling a bright warning sticker off a roll with the kind of theatrical flair that told me she had been waiting for this moment. I held up my phone and started recording. Stephanie did not even flinch. "Your camera does not matter, my minutes are the truth," she said, and I made a mental note of that line because it sounded rehearsed. She was the board secretary for the HOA, which meant she controlled every scrap of paperwork that came out of the association, and she had been using that power like a personal fiefdom for months. I had been trying to sell my house, and every potential buyer who ran a title search got spooked by the threatening letters Stephanie kept filing about compliance violations that did not exist. The HOA was threatening disclosures and liens, and I was running out of time to close the deal before my financing fell through. Stephanie planted a reflective triangle marker near my front wheel, like she was marking a crime scene. The tow driver, a guy in his 20s with a company polo that looked 2 sizes too small, was already lowering the wheel lift. I stepped between him and my car. "This vehicle is registered," I said. "It has a valid decal. It is parked in my assigned spot." Stephanie cut me off with a sharp laugh. "The gate system logged you as trespassing," she said. "You entered the community without valid credentials after 6 p.m., which means your vehicle is subject to immediate toll under Section 12 of the Parking Enforcement Addendum." I stared at her. "The gate glitched," I said. "It would not read my clicker. I had to wait for someone else to open it so I could follow them in." "That is called tailgating," Stephanie said, "and it is a violation." She keyed her handheld radio and said something I could not hear, then looked back at me with a smile that made my stomach turn. The tow driver hesitated. Stephanie did not. She waved the clipboard at him and said something about emergency access, which was a complete fabrication because my car was in my driveway, not blocking anything. I pulled out my phone and opened the HOA app to show my active decal registration. Stephanie grabbed my phone out of my hand. "I am confiscating this as evidence," she said. I lunged for it and she stepped back, holding it above her head like a playground bully. The tow driver finally spoke up. "Ma'am, I need to see the authorization," he said. Stephanie thrust the clipboard at him. "Right there," she said, pointing at a line I could not read from where I stood. "This vehicle is in violation of overnight guest parking restrictions, and the owner refused compliance." "I am not a guest," I shouted. "I live here." Stephanie ignored me and kept talking to the driver. "Hook it up," she said. "I am calling management, and I am going to be dramatic about it if you do not do your job." The driver shrugged and moved toward my car. I stepped in front of him again and he stopped, looking uncomfortable. Stephanie keyed her radio again. "I need backup at Harborview Ridge, Lot 14, she said. "Uncooperative resident refusing lawful tow." I felt my pulse hammering in my ears. This was insane. I had lived in this neighborhood for 2 years and never had a single parking issue until Stephanie got elected to the board 6 months ago and started running a compliance hotline that she controlled and wrote herself. Every week there was a new notice taped to someone's door, a new fine, a new threat. The neighborhood group chat was full of people complaining, but no one wanted to challenge her because she had a reputation for retaliation. I thought about my house sale and the disclosure packet sitting on my realtor's desk. If Stephanie filed a tow incident report, it would show up in the title search and kill the deal. I could not let that happen. I pulled my wallet out and held up my driver's license with my address printed right on it. "This is my home," I said. "You are making a false report." Stephanie snatched the license out of my hand and studied it like she was looking for a forgery. "Your decal expired last month," she said. I shook my head. "No, it did not. I renewed it online and got the confirmation email. Let me show you." Stephanie handed my license back but kept my phone. "I do not need to see anything," she said. "My records show your decal is invalid, and my records are what the board relies on." The driver snapped the tire clamp onto my front wheel. The metallic click echoed in the humid air, and I felt something cold settle in my chest. Stephanie handed him a stack of papers, and he signed something without reading it. I tried to grab the clipboard to see what he was signing, but Stephanie jerked it away. "That is HOA property," she said. "You are not authorized to view enforcement documents." The driver climbed back into his truck and Stephanie handed me a bright yellow slip of paper. "This is your tow authorization receipt," she said. "You have 72 hours to pay the fine and retrieval fee, plus a daily storage charge. If you do not pay, the vehicle will be sold at auction." I stared at the paper. The total was over $600. I looked up at her. "You cannot do this," I said. Stephanie tilted her head like she was explaining something to a child. "I just did," she said. "If you want to appeal, you can submit a written request to the board, but it will take at least 30 days to schedule a hearing, and in the meantime, the fees will keep accruing." She turned and walked toward her car, a white sedan parked across the street with a magnetic HOA sign stuck to the door. I stood there with the yellow slip in my hand, watching her drive away, and I made a decision. I was not going to let her win. The next morning I called the tow company and asked for a copy of the authorization paperwork. They told me it was on file with the HOA and I would need to request it through proper channels. I called the management company that the landing at Harborview Ridge Association contracted with and asked to see the tow authorization. They told me Stephanie was the point of contact for all compliance matters and I would need to go through her. I called Stephanie directly. She did not answer. I left a voicemail asking for the paperwork. She did not call back. I sent an email to the board requesting a copy of the parking enforcement addendum she kept citing. No response. I sent a second email. No response. I texted the HOA group chat asking if anyone else had been towed recently. 3 people responded immediately. One guy said his truck got towed for being 6 inches over the driveway line. A woman said her guest got towed after 10 p.m. even though the guest pass was clearly visible on the dashboard. Another person said they got a violation notice for parking on the street during the day, which was not even mentioned in the rules. I screenshot every message and started a folder on my phone. Then I walked next door and knocked. My neighbor, a retired notary named Bill, answered. He had been in the neighborhood for 12 years and had watched the HOA spiral under Stephanie's control. "I need help," I told him. He nodded and invited me in. We sat at his kitchen table, and I explained everything. Bill listened, took notes, and then pulled out a printed copy of the original HOA bylaws from 2008. "Look at Section 9, he said. "Parking enforcement requires a 72-hour written notice before any vehicle can be towed, unless it is blocking emergency access. Did you get a notice?" I shook my head. Bill tapped the page. "Then the tow is illegal," he said. "Stephanie is making up rules as she goes." Bill helped me draft a formal complaint to the management company and the board, citing the bylaw violation and requesting an immediate reversal of the tow and a refund of all fees. We sent it certified mail. Then Bill suggested we canvass the neighborhood and collect witness statements from anyone else who had been targeted by Stephanie's enforcement spree. Over the next 2 days, we knocked on 18 doors. 14 people had stories. 10 of them were willing to write sworn statements. Bill notarized every one. The statements all followed the same pattern. Stephanie would issue a violation notice with no prior warning, refuse to provide documentation, and escalate to towing or fines within hours. One couple said she had their car booted in the middle of the night while they were asleep and demanded payment in cash the next morning. Another guy said Stephanie told him his guest pass was fake, even though he had printed it directly from the HOA website. I compiled everything into a tabbed binder: the bylaw printout, the witness statements, the group chat screenshots, my decal renewal confirmation, and the yellow tow slip. I also printed the email chain where I had requested the parking enforcement addendum and received no response. Bill looked at the binder and nodded. "This is solid," he said. "But you need something that connects Stephanie directly to intent. You need proof she knew what she was doing was wrong." I thought about that for a minute. Then I remembered something. 2 weeks ago, before the tow, I had been added to a private HOA group chat by mistake. It was supposed to be board members only, but someone fat-fingered the invite list and I got added. I had not said anything because I wanted to see what they were talking about. I pulled up the chat on my phone and scrolled back. There it was, a message thread from Stephanie to the other board members. She had written, "I am ramping up enforcement on guest parking and decals. If anyone pushes back, we tow immediately and let them fight it out later. The fines and tow fees will cover the legal costs if they sue." Another board member had responded, "What about the 72-hour notice rule?" Stephanie replied, "We will say it does not apply to tailgating violations. No one reads the bylaws anyway." I screenshot the entire thread and texted it to Bill. He called me 10 seconds later. "This is your smoking gun," he said. "She admitted she is ignoring the bylaws on purpose. This proves intent." I nodded, like I accepted it, because I wanted her comfortable and careless. I did not tell anyone else about the screenshot. I wanted Stephanie to think I was just another frustrated homeowner with no real leverage. I paid the tow fees to get my car back, but I kept the receipt. Then I submitted my formal hearing request to the board, knowing Stephanie would try to control the process. 3 days later I got a response. The board scheduled a hearing for the following week, but the notice came with a catch. The hearing would be held at the community clubhouse, and Stephanie would be the one running it because she was the secretary. The notice also said I had 15 minutes to present my case, and the board would render a decision immediately afterward. No outside attorneys allowed, no recording devices permitted. I read the notice twice and felt my blood pressure spike. This was a setup. Stephanie was going to control the room, control the clock, and control the outcome. I called Bill. "We need to flip this," I said. He agreed. We spent the next 2 days contacting every homeowner who had signed a witness statement and invited them to attend the hearing. We also reached out to the management company and requested a representative be present to observe. The management company sent a polite email saying they would send someone if their schedule allowed, which I knew was code for probably not. Then, the day before the hearing, Stephanie sent out a mass email to the entire neighborhood. The subject line was, "Compliance Hearing Notice." The body of the email said that a resident was appealing a parking violation, and the board would be making an example of non-compliance to deter future violations. She did not name me, but everyone knew who she was talking about because the neighborhood group chat had been buzzing about my tow for a week. The night of the hearing I arrived at the clubhouse 30 minutes early. Bill was already there with 3 other neighbors who had signed statements. More people kept showing up. By the time the hearing was supposed to start, there were at least 25 residents in the room, most of them standing because there were not enough chairs. Stephanie walked in and froze. She looked at the crowd, then at me, then back at the crowd. Her face went pale and then flushed red. She walked to the front table, where the other board members were sitting, and picked up her handheld radio. I watched her key it and mutter something I could not hear. The board president, an older man named Carl, called the meeting to order. He looked uncomfortable. Stephanie sat down next to him and pulled out a folder. She did not look at me. Carl cleared his throat and said we were here to review a parking violation appeal filed by a resident in Lot 14. He asked me to present my case. I stood up, walked to the front, and set the tabbed binder on the table in front of the board. Then I turned and handed a second copy to Bill, who stood up and started passing around individual pages to the residents in the room. Stephanie lunged forward and tried to grab the binder off the table. Carl put his hand on her arm and shook his head. "Let him speak," Carl said. I opened the binder to the first tab and started talking. "On the evening of the incident," I said, "I was locked out of the community gate due to a system malfunction. I followed another resident through the gate, which is standard practice when the system fails. When I arrived at my assigned parking spot, the board secretary appeared with a tow truck and claimed I was trespassing. I was given no prior notice, no written warning, and no opportunity to respond. According to the original HOA bylaws, Section 9, all parking violations require a 72-hour written notice before enforcement action. I did not receive any notice. I turned to the second tab. Here are sworn witness statements from 10 residents who have experienced similar enforcement actions by the board secretary. Each statement describes a pattern of violations issued without notice, refusal to provide documentation, and escalation to towing within hours. Bill notarized every statement. Stephanie stood up. "This is irrelevant," she said. "We are here to discuss your violation, not a general review of enforcement policy." I looked at Carl. "Is that true?" I asked. Carl hesitated. "Stephanie is correct that this hearing is specific to your case," he said, "but the witness statements can be submitted as supporting evidence." I nodded. "Then I would like to submit them," I said. Carl nodded. Stephanie sat back down, her jaw clenched. I turned to the third tab. "This is my decal renewal confirmation," I said. "It shows I renewed my parking decal online 6 weeks ago and received confirmation from the management company. My decal is valid." Stephanie stood up again. "Our system shows your decal expired," she said. "Your email is not proof of anything." I pulled out my phone and opened the management company app. I turned the screen toward Carl. "Here is my active decal in the system," I said. "It is valid through next year." Stephanie grabbed the phone out of my hand. I said, "No recording devices," she shouted. "This is not a recording device," I said. "It is proof." Carl leaned forward. "Stephanie, give him the phone back," he said. Stephanie hesitated, then slammed the phone on the table. I picked up the phone and turned to the fourth tab. "This is the tow authorization receipt," I said. "The total fee was over $600, which I paid under protest to retrieve my vehicle. I am requesting a full refund and a reversal of the violation." Stephanie leaned forward. "You tailgated," she said. "That is a separate violation that overrides the 72-hour notice rule." I looked at Carl. "Is that in the bylaws?" I asked. Carl flipped through the binder and shook his head. "I do not see anything about tailgating here," he said. Stephanie pulled out her own folder and slapped it on the table. "It is in the parking enforcement addendum," she said. "I added it last month after the board approved updated compliance procedures." I raised an eyebrow. "Can I see the addendum?" I asked. Stephanie hesitated. "It is not finalized yet," she said. "Then how can you enforce it?" I asked. The room erupted. Residents started shouting questions at Stephanie. Carl banged his hand on the table. "Everyone calm down," he said. "Stephanie, do you have a copy of the updated procedures?" Stephanie shook her head. "They are still in draft," she said. "Then they are not enforceable," Carl said. Stephanie's face went from red to white. She picked up her handheld radio and keyed it. "I need you to come in," she said. A minute later, the tow truck driver from that night walked into the clubhouse. Stephanie pointed at me. "This is the guy," she said. "Tell them what happened." The driver looked confused. He glanced at me, then at Stephanie, then at the crowd. "I got a call from the HOA," he said. "She told me the car was blocking emergency access and needed immediate tow." I shook my head. "My car was in my driveway," I said. "It was not blocking anything." The driver shrugged. "She told me it was blocking access," he said. "I just do what the client says." Stephanie smiled. "There you go," she said. "Emergency access override. No notice required." I pulled out the fifth tab. "This is a photo taken by my neighbor at the time of the tow," I said. "You can see my car is fully in my driveway, at least 10 feet from the street. There is no emergency vehicle access issue." I handed the photo to Carl. He studied it and frowned. Stephanie grabbed the photo and tore it in half. "That is doctored," she said. Carl stood up. "Stephanie, that is enough," he said. "Sit down." Stephanie sat down, but she was shaking. Carl looked at me. "Do you have anything else?" he asked. I nodded. I turned to the last tab. "I have one more thing," I said. I pulled out a printed copy of the HOA group chat screenshot. "This is a message thread from the board's private group chat," I said. In this thread, the board secretary explicitly states that she is ignoring the 72-hour notice rule and instructing the board to tow residents immediately to generate fee revenue. She also admits that she knows the enforcement actions are not supported by the bylaws. I slid the printout across the table to Carl. He read it. His face went gray. He looked at Stephanie. "Is this real?" he asked. Stephanie grabbed the paper and crumpled it. "That chat was private," she shouted. "You were not supposed to be in there." "I was added by mistake," I said. "But once I was in, I saw what you were doing." Carl turned to the other board member, a woman named Linda. "Did you know about this?" he asked. Linda shook her head. "I thought we were just tightening up compliance," she said. "I did not know Stephanie was ignoring the bylaws." The room exploded. Residents started shouting over each other. Someone yelled that Stephanie owed them money. Someone else yelled that she should be removed from the board. Bill stood up and raised his hand. "I have a motion," he said. The room quieted. "I move that the board immediately reverse this tow violation, refund all fees paid by the resident, and launch a full audit of all parking enforcement actions taken in the last 6 months." Linda raised her hand. "I second," she said. Carl looked at Stephanie. "Do you have anything to say?" he asked. Stephanie stood up, grabbed her handbag and her handheld radio, and walked out. The door slammed behind her. Carl sighed. "All in favor?" he asked. Every hand in the room went up. The board voted to refund my $600, reverse the violation, and hire an independent auditor to review every enforcement action Stephanie had taken since she became secretary. Carl also announced that the board would hold a special election to replace her. Over the next 2 weeks, the auditor uncovered a pattern that made my stomach turn. Stephanie had been issuing fake parking violations and pocketing a percentage of the tow fees through a kickback arrangement with the tow company. The company had been overbilling the HOA for every tow, and Stephanie had been approving the invoices without review. The ledger showed over $15,000 in questionable charges. The management company immediately terminated their contract with the tow vendor and filed a complaint with the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services, which regulates towing companies. The city of Jacksonville also sent a formal warning to the HOA to stop predatory towing practices, and the board publicly reversed the parking enforcement policy to avoid municipal trouble. Stephanie resigned from the board the day the audit results were published. She also left the neighborhood group chat and stopped answering calls. A few residents tried to organize a class action lawsuit to recover their fees, but most people just wanted to move on. I got my refund check in the mail 3 weeks later, along with a formal apology letter from Carl. Bill helped me draft a response thanking the board for their action and requesting that the new bylaws include a mandatory notice period for all violations, which the board approved at the next meeting. My house sale closed 2 weeks after that. The title search came back clean, and the buyer never knew about the tow incident because the board expunged it from my file. I moved out on a Saturday morning, and Bill came over to help me load the truck. We stood in the driveway for a minute, looking at the empty house. "You did good," Bill said. I shook his hand. "I could not have done it without you," I said. He smiled. "Just promise me one thing," he said. "Next place you move, read the HOA bylaws before you sign." I laughed. "Deal," I said. A few weeks later, I got a message in the old neighborhood group chat. Someone had posted a photo of Stephanie's house with a for sale sign in the front yard. The comments were brutal. One person wrote that karma works fast. Another person said they heard she moved to a condo with no HOA. I did not respond. I just archived the chat and moved on, but I kept the tabbed binder in a box in my new garage, just in case I ever need to remind myself that sometimes the only way to win against a bully is to show up with receipts, witnesses, and one really good screenshot. The funny thing is, I ran into the tow truck driver a few months later at a gas station. He recognized me and walked over. "Hey man," he said. "I just wanted to say I am sorry about that night. I did not know what was going on." I nodded. "It is fine," I said. "You were just doing your job." He shook his head. "No, I should have asked more questions," he said. "After that whole thing blew up, my company dropped the contract with that HOA, and I got reassigned to a different zone. I heard that lady got in a lot of trouble. I told him I appreciated it, and we shook hands." As I drove away, I thought about how many people had been caught in Stephanie's enforcement machine, and how close I had come to being just another statistic in her ledger. The best part of the whole thing happened about 6 months later. I got an email from Carl, the board president. He said the HOA had implemented a new compliance process that required all violations to go through a 3-step review before any enforcement action could be taken. He also said they had hired a professional management company to handle all parking issues, which took the power out of the hands of any single board member. He thanked me for pushing back and said the neighborhood was a better place because of it. I wrote back and told him I was glad things had changed, and I meant it. A neighbor petition that forces a vote during the meeting can do more than any lawsuit, and I had learned that the hardest way possible. I also learned that when someone like Stephanie tells you your camera does not matter because her minutes are the truth, you should take that as a warning. People who believe their version of reality is the only one that counts will do anything to protect that illusion, even if it means breaking the rules they claim to enforce. But the thing about illusions is they only work as long as no one shines a light on them. The moment you show up with documentation, witnesses, and a timeline that does not match their story, the whole thing falls apart, and when it does, you get to watch Karen's smug smile vanish when the room turns on her, which is honestly worth more than any refund check. The last I heard, Stephanie moved to a town about an hour north and joined a different HOA board. I hope she learned something, but I doubt it. People like that do not change. They just find new places to enforce their tiny empires. But at least in Jacksonville, at the Landing at Harborview Ridge Association, Karen's credibility collapsed in front of witnesses, and the HOA stopped selective enforcement after complaints piled up. That is about as close to justice as you get in the world of homeowner associations, and I will take it. Thank you for listening.